G'day guys, it's Bruce here. This is a bit of a recap on the recent game I ran. So after elaborating on the name, which pretty happy to say is called the Twins Under the Red Moon, and I think that really captures the adventure itself quite well. So essentially what I'll do is I'll have a bit of a run through of the adventure that I ran with the players, some of the things that happened and what occurred. So this was the first adventure that the party was going to encounter. There was an opportunity for them before the game to create second level characters. I wanted to start with second level characters because I thought it would be easier to add a little bit more flavour. They'd have a few more abilities. They'd also be able to take a few more hits before really coming to significant damage. So basically everybody started at second level. There was 3 players. I sort of railroaded them at the start with the initial introduction into what is happening. A little bit, I imagine, like a convention game where I've really sort of thrown right in front of them an adventure from the start. And basically what happens is the story starts that they're traveling to town to resupply, and on the way to town they spot a huge billowing smoke coming up over the hill, and they decide to investigate. On investigating, they come across this frantic scene. There's been a huge fight. There's a barn on fire. There's sheep and cow wandering around in sort of this dazed fashion, and as well as that, there's servants of the local lord, and this is the scene they've come across, is the lord's manor. And these are the buildings outside, and the servants are walking around sort of a little bit dazed. Some of them trying to put the fire out in the barn. Some of them are trying to collect the sheep, and who knows what else is going on there. And that's when they meet the main NPC, or the one that provides the very first task for them, which is a gentleman called Richard, and he is basically the lord or noble for the local area, and this is his manor. And he explains to them that he's been injured. He's got a sore leg. He can't travel very fast. And his children, his daughter and son, both teenagers, have been kidnapped, and they've been taken by this marauding party to be sacrificed on that very evening at 12 o'clock at midnight when the moon rises. And within the story it sets out that there's an astrological event where the moon is going to turn red that night, and when it does, if they sacrifice the kids, then it will grant them a range of mystical powers, so this marauding group can sort of go out and take over the local area and sort of, I guess, become kings of their own. Obviously there's a little bit of a goal for the marauders. They want to take the kids and use them to gain these special powers. We've added a little bit of time pressure by saying that they need to save the kids by 12 o'clock that night, and if they don't, that's when the event is going to occur, and the children are going to be sacrificed. So there's a bit of time pressure to go, and also there's a little bit of money. I actually, in the game, I said to them that it was really urgent. They needed to get going, and the nobleman never really offered an amount of money to them or a reward, and they never asked. They seemed quite happy to set out immediately to save these innocent kids who have been captured and to try and save them. So after a little bit of conversing, the nobleman, Richard, he offers 2 of his servants to assist them. And these 2 servants know where this temple is that the children have been taken, and they're going to travel with the players and show them where the temple is and potentially help them along the way. And these 2 servants, I've got a name for them here, John and Gregor. And basically these 2 are keen to go with them. One of them, John, he seems a little bit shifty. He's got sort of yellow teeth and stuff like that. But actually, he is the honest one. He wants to help the players. Whereas Gregor, he's a little bit dodgy. In fact, he's been paid by the Marauders to let them know when a convenient time to attack the nobleman's manor was. And in fact, he wants to go and join with the Marauders so he can partake in the ceremony and potentially gain some of those magical powers and blessings himself. So he's keen and willing to betray the party at the soonest and best opportunity. So once basically the party's prepared to head out, they did ask for some supplies, a few rations and stuff like that. They had one of the servant boys come out, collect some stuff from the nobleman's manor, and set them up with some gear. They trekked off. Now, the actual journey before they set off, they got told that it's about 17 miles away, but through rugged terrain, mountainous terrain, that was going to be quite slow going. And in the rules, that sort of is half movement. So to actually get there, it's going to take pretty much a full day's march. And there's not really any other way around it. That would mean after that sort of 8 hours of trekking, they're going to have to do a fatigue roll. But what I decided to do before the game was I introduced an opportunity where the players, if they wanted, they would discover a dry creek bed. And so this happens after several hours. They're walking along, they're trekking along, and they have an opportunity to see, depending on their passive perception, a silhouetted figure up on the mountain ahead of them. And that figure spots them, and he lets his companions know. And he's actually part of the marauding group, and they have been collecting some of the sheep and cattle that they'd stolen from the Lord, and they're trailing behind the main group, which has already made it to the temple. And this group, on spotting the players coming, decide to set up an ambush. So in this particular case, the players don't spot the silhouetted figure. They don't see them looking back. So they basically wander up to where, over the top of this rolling hill, there's this long, dry riverbed. It's surrounded by boulders, and there's this outcrop of trees where you can see where it's when the winter snow melts, it sort of creates this really lush little pocket of trees and so forth. And it's good walking. And so if they were to go down into this dry riverbed, they can save some time, and I thought this is an opportunity to reduce that need to do a fatigue roll after the day's march. But if they go into that situation, then there's an ambush waiting. So, they as the players could potentially trek around, they could investigate to the side, they could do a range of things, obviously, but not these players. They walk directly into the dry riverbed. I did try to emphasize that there was some big boulders sort of on either side and so forth, but anyway, they headed on right down the guts of it. And so I set an ambush. I used some of the basic humanoid characters from the Monsters Manual. Just used a scout and a couple of marauders, or bandits I think they were, and they attacked. First off, a few arrows got shot, and then from the side of the boulders some bandits came around and they attacked the party, and they sort of had a bit of a fight. The players handled the three bandits pretty easily, but the actual scout was a little bit harder. They got hit a few times by the arrows coming out of these bushes that were sort of up ahead, which is where the scout was, and it took them a while to deal with the bandits before they chased over to find the scout. And when they got there, the scout bolted or headed up over the hills beyond, and they they went to make chase, but then they decided to stop because they didn't want to separate. But at that time, I had the non-player characters, the NPCs, which was John and Gregors, to actually get quite excited, and they decided to follow the scout. And as they were following, they spotted a large group of sheep, the sheep that they'd actually captured, the marauders had captured and were taking with them, and the sheep bolted over the hill as well. So they were chasing the sheep over the hill, and the players were like asking them, stop, come back, but they didn't. They raced over the side of the hill, and they thought, well, that's the end of them. That's we'll never see those NPCs again. But a short while later, I had the NPCs come back over, and they rejoined with them, and while that was happening, the players were actually setting up a can or a symbol to try and leave a message for the NPCs, so when they came back over, they'd see that message and potentially follow on after the players, because they weren't going to wait. Once they'd regrouped, spent a little bit of time recovering and casting some healing spells, they trekked on to the mountain, or the base of the mountain, where the temple was located. On trekking up to the mountain, they discovered that cut into the side of the hill was this large grey stone architecture that led into a tunnel deep within. And it was nighttime already, and there was flickering orange flames coming from within. And outside the entrance was 3 tents and a fireplace already burning. And so I had the idea that there was going to be some tents there, and depending on how the players were going, I was going to have some more bandits there or not. And because I didn't want them to get too beaten up, because they're still only just second level, I decided that there would be one bandit sleeping in one of the tents. So they decided to investigate. They could have just gone past, but they snuck around, had a look, and they saw the one bandit in there, and they decided to quietly coup de grace them. And once that bandit was dealt with, they investigated his supplies, what did he have there, and they found a mask. Now, in the story, the nobleman had told the players when they first arrived, he'd mentioned that the bandits or the marauders had worn these sort of cultish type masks which were like bark cut-offs of trees that had eye holes cut out and white paint put over the top of them. Just sort of improvised, I placed one of these masks in the tent with the now deceased bandit, and the players decided to pick it up, and immediately I could tell there was an opportunity for them to use it to try and sneak in or bypass the guards or bandits inside and pretend they were part of the bandit team. From there, they basically snuck in, and they could see that there was this sort of large open hall up ahead and a few hallways either side. They decided to just have 2 of the players head up ahead, go ahead up into the large hall area just to investigate, because they could hear some noise, some chatter or something going on. And on going up ahead, they spotted several bandits sitting around. They were drinking, just relaxing. They seemed to be talking about the night's events that were to come, and they seemed quite jovial and pleasant. But at that moment, the players, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but something set it off, and the players attacked. And at the very same time, the other players and the NPCs who'd stayed back at the entrance to the hall, one of the side halls, a NPC started coming wandering down there, and that was an NPC with 2 bales of water hanging on a stick. So, like stick on his shoulder, he had the pails of water there, and he was carrying them down from a well which was at one end of the hall, and he was taking it to the other end, which was a kitchen. So there was a big fight it ensued, and after fighting with the bandits, taking care of those guys, and the water boy, as I affectionately call him, they decided to investigate down the hall. That's where they discovered a ogre was in one of the rooms, and he was almost immediately infuriated, as his description indicates. He was very upset that these people were in the temple, and he decided to attack them immediately. And it was quite a significant battle, and the players took a fair bit of damage. They did try to reason with him for a second, but on seeing that he was unreasonable, they quickly fell into a combat action. It did take a little while, but after the players had dealt with the ogre, they needed to take a short rest because they'd taken quite a bit of damage. Once they'd re-prepared, they went out, investigated some of the other rooms. They found a room with a large well, and there was huge pots filled with water, obviously some sort of water room, and they'd obviously found the room with the ogre in it, and where his supplies were. And in their pockets and things like that, I was actually using the very old DMG 2nd edition random items table, and I was finding items in there, bits of string, little bottles of oil and potions and stuff like that, and I was adding to that, and it was really quite cool because they were finding some of these things, and one of them was like this little vial of perfume, which again was randomly selected, but the players sort of imbued that with the idea that it was some sort of ceremonial oil that they were going to use for the ceremony that night. So, they were sort of seeing opportunities where these random items actually could be part of the adventure itself. From there, they investigated a storeroom. They went into an ogre's bedroom. They found a chest which they smashed open and collected some items from, and then they investigated a large kitchen. And in that kitchen, they actually found a couple of NPCs where they were also sitting and drinking and talking about the night's events. And one of them was a cult-looking character. It was a cultist from the Monsters Manual. They queried the players a little bit, but I gave the players a little bit of flexibility, opportunity to sort of set the tone of this event. And so the players were very cautious. They tried to pretend like they were just there on purpose and that they weren't sneaking in. They took a seat at the kitchen tables. They tried to have something to eat. At some point, they decided it would be too dangerous to leave these guys there, so they would have to fight them, and because they didn't want to find themselves having to come back later and being cut off by these guys. So they fought these guys and dealt with them. Now, while that was happening, or before, when they were fighting the ogre, Gregor, he'd run off. They don't know where he went, but they was now starting to get a little suspicious of this guy because he was not being as helpful as they had thought. Meanwhile, John, the other NPC, had become very helpful, and he was definitely getting into the fight, and he was taking a few of the enemy down. Once they'd done that, they investigated through the kitchen into these two separate hallways. Obviously, there was a left one and a right one, and one went down this sort of dusty hallway with some webs there, and the players immediately said, "Oh no, we don't want to go down this way. This seems suspicious. Why is it so dusty and ill-used? Why are there sort of these web things around?" And obviously there was, my idea was that down this hallway there was a set of spiders, large or giant spiders that had sort of set up a nest down here, and they ate anybody who come down this way. And so the players quickly cottoned onto that idea and decided to go the other way. So going the other way, they discovered there was a large room filled with bandits who were camping out and waiting for that night's events. There was bedrolls set out, so there was really no way of getting past them. So the players set back into a room that was a little bit further before that room they'd come to, and they waited there. And as they waited, they saw Gregos come past, and he headed up to that room. Now, they don't know what happened. They don't know how he got up there. But by the time they followed along behind him to get to that room, all the bandits who had been in the room with all the bedrolls and things had moved on. So they followed along and they came to another room where they heard shouting and fighting up ahead. And what that was actually the young boy had escaped his prison. He'd convinced the NPCs guarding him to let him out, and he was trying to fight his way out, but he was quickly overpowered by these bandits. And as that's happening, the players hear it, and they come along and they come to this scene where there's this room with like 10 bandits in there, and some of them are fighting the kid, and they're trying to capture him and pull him off and take him off back down the hallway. Meanwhile, some of the other bandits are there, and they're surprised to see the players. But that's when they see Gregor, and he's there, and he identifies them immediately as working for Richard and there to save the kids, and that these guys are not part of the ceremony and they should be dealt with. And so there was this big fight, and the players were like fighting for like it seemed like ages, and we have one character who is playing a halfling barbarian, and he was trying to use all the different techniques to step around and hit as many characters as he could, because even though these characters weren't very high level, the challenge rating wasn't very high. It meant the players were only second level, and there was only 3 of them, so there was still quite a dangerous situation. At the end of the session, or this is where we came to the end of this particular first session, they'd taken care of all the dispatched or killed all the bandits in the room, but they hadn't been able to stop the bandits from grabbing the boy and dragging him off down the hall. Now they don't know what's happened with him here, and this is where we're going to pick up the next adventure. What I had to consider at the end here, when we sort of called it a night, was that really in the map that I'd drawn up, there wasn't really much further to go. There was sort of a hallway or two and down into this main room where the leader of the Marauders had been camped with the daughter also locked up in those rooms. And that led into this huge ceremony room, like this big cavern with these columns in it, and it was going to have this big dais and a stage platform where he was going to perform the ceremony, and there was going to be this like crack in the roof where at midnight the red beams of the moon were going to shine down right onto this big stage where the sacrifice was going to be performed. And that was sort of that's sort of there was going to be a big fight ensue, and I have this idea that the players, or during the fight, an explosion would go off underneath one of these columns, and that would cause the roof to cave in, so that at the end of the adventure the players didn't have to go all the way back through the halls. They could climb out through this hole or cavity that had been exposed, and they could then get outside onto the side of the mountain. But because really it's only a hallway too, and then this big fight, and we're going to come back to play this adventure again, and we've got a few more players who are going to join us next time. I'm thinking, what I'll do is I'll actually extend that, and maybe I'll create a second level, and in this second level maybe it'll be a little bit harder, and we'll have a few more things for the players to encounter before they get to this big cavernous room. So the end will be the same, but instead of just doing a hallway, they're going to add a few more obstacles and traps, maybe some things to investigate and potentially try and solve some sort of puzzle. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll see what I actually add in there when we play next time. Thanks, everybody.